play green yellow a lot at 10-round tournament.
Hey, what's up? My name's Dexter Riley, and today I'm going to be making a video about my recent success with the deck Green Yellow Law.
One sentence to describe how you play the deck.
Well, fundamentally, the goal of Green Yellow Law is just to survive as long as you possibly can until you either close out the game with Cavendish and Restand Law, or you extend the game one more turn with an 8-cost kid.
Why did you choose to play Green Yellow Law?
I chose to play Green Yellow Law because I just think that it has a really good spot in the meta right now, where it just demolishes UP, which is becoming more and more popular, and then it has about a 50-50 matchup into Zoro and unfavored into Rayleigh. But if your opponent doesn't know how to play the matchup, you can oftentimes close out a win.
Okay. What are the key cards and combos of your deck?
Well, some of the key combos and cards are the searchers. And in the early game, really all you want to be doing is using searchers to find other searchers, so then you can just completely fill your board and shape your hand exactly how you want it to be, which is generally going to be Cavendish for 5 or 6 Dawn, and then 7-cost Law for 7 or 8 Dawn.
Are your good matchups?
Well, definitely your best matchup as far as competitive decks is UP, just because you're able to really rush them down. In Peoria, I beat the first 2 UPs I played against on 7 Dawn and then 8 Dawn, and I might have even been able to win that quickly against the last one, but I chose to clear board at a point instead.
What are your bad matchups?
Your absolute worst matchup is Blackbeard, because most of the cards in the deck just don't work. You have to hope to just get by on maybe getting lucky and getting an extra 5 cost out of your life, and hoping that you draw into all your little blockers so that they can't remove stuff very effectively. But it's a very, very bad matchup. And then I think Rayleigh is unfavored, but there are things you can do to figure that matchup out. Largely, what you want to do is your initial swings will just go into Rayleigh's life before they turn their board sideways, but after that, you want to just keep swinging at their board. Like, a lot of your characters, like 7-cost Law, are going to be way bigger than theirs, so you're able to really whittle down their amount of characters until eventually you play a kid that either you're going to win the turn after that kid is removed, or you've whittled down their board enough that they can't really threaten the kid, and you're able to counter out of whatever their swings at kid are.
What are the strongs and weak points of your deck?
One of the biggest strengths of the deck is its consistency with all of its searchers. One of the weaker parts of the deck is that because in the early game you're using your lives, you're kind of like a 3 or even potentially 2 life leader, but you don't get the buff of being a 6k or having an absurdly strong ability.
Why do you think Law wasn't very popular?
I think that Law isn't very popular because a lot of people have just become accustomed to the best way to do well in the game is to play whatever the defined best decks in format are. But now I feel like those matchups are between the best decks are more polarizing than they've been in the past based on how you draw. So I think it leaves a little bit of room in the meta for other decks to pop up, like Zoro Sanji has recently. Even Koala had a little bit of success because they can just see the right matchups and win, and they have a lot of consistency in their game plans.
If you could give one pro tip for someone that is playing Law and wants to get better with the deck, what is your pro tip?
I think just be incredibly considerate about how you're taking your life. Like, figure out if you need a card in order to be able to complete a certain combo for the next turn, or if you're going to use your life on the next turn to either Zeus. Zeus I use all the time because oftentimes your opponent would just swing the character you remove anyways, and you would take that life. So you're just removing the character from the board and taking the life as you would as if it's still on the board. So yeah, just being very considerate of that, because sometimes I counter out of the first swing if I already have my curve, but sometimes if I'm digging for a piece, I'll take the first life. So it's not as, it doesn't have a blueprint the way that a lot of other decks do with how they take their life.
Where do you see Law in PRB and OP13 meta?
I don't think that Law is going to be quite as strong, at least not in my current testing. I also didn't think Law was going to be great in OP12, but I think that the GP matchup becomes a little bit more difficult because they're able to so consistently get out their guys that they're really able, they don't have a turn where they can lose the pressure that they could apply to Kid, because they're just always going to hit their curve. And then when they get big enough bodies that they're actually able to swing into Kid relatively effectively, even if they're not playing the reduction event. And I feel like Kid is very important in that matchup, so that you don't just die to whatever Rush Luffy they put down.
Would you make any changes on your list for the Green Yellow Law?
So I only made 2 changes in the list from someone who had won a CS in OPO 12 in Asia, cutting a 4th Koshiro and a 4th Blocker Law in order to put in 2 Bonnies. And some of my reasoning behind that was that I wanted to be able to have a card that could effectively swing over Buggies and Zoros, because most of this deck is slash. I have 30 slash targets for Perona, and I have 37 Supernova targets. But I wanted to be able to swing over those anti-slash characters. The issue is that if they play those on curve, you really don't want to be playing that Bonnie till you're at 7 Dawn when you can effectively use its ability. So it can be difficult to actually get an opportunity to swing over those cards. And Bonnie wasn't great for me at the event. I think I played it once and countered with it 1 or 2 times.
What were your matchups on the event?
Well, so round 1 I played against UP. I won that one on 7 Dawn just by using double Restand Law. I played 1 Restand Law from hand, and I played 1 from life in order to just win really quickly with a bunch of 8s after he tapped out. And then round 2 I played against O'Reilly. This was one of my closest matches of the day. He spent all of his Dawn removing my Kid, and then on the subsequent turn he had 3 cards in hand and 3 life, and I swung 7 with my leader. He took it. I went 9 with Cavendish. He took it. I played Restand Law, 9 with Cavendish, restood 2 more Dawn, and then I swung 11 with 7 cost Law, and they all went through. So that one I just knew that was my only out, and I went for it. So then round 3 I played against another UP, and I just had like all the blockers, all the searchers. There's just no way he was ever going to get through, and I played a bunch of Restand Law already, put him to 0, killed his Nami blocker, and he scooped on my 8 Dawn turn. And then next round I played against a UP Sanji, and I just found out that my only out to win the game was going to be to restand one of my searchers, because he played a Kamazo early in the game, so nothing on my board could stick, because I'm really reliant on those 2 cost blockers to make my other bodies more sticky, as in they can't be removed very easily. Oh, and so then the out that I found was I just restood a Luffy on my field, because I already had placed a 5 cost Law in my life, Luffy Searcher, so I went 9-9 with that, and that was enough to get me the game. Round 5 I played against Yellow Kid, which I knew the matchup from OP11, and it was just extremely favored back then, because basically you're able to take all of your life, play down Kid, and they don't have a way to remove Kid, and that's exactly what I did, and it worked very well. And so then round 6 I played against O'Reilly. This was another one that I was a little bit nervous about, but after he used his second mole pistol, I felt like I was very comfortable to play my 8 cost Kid, and he wouldn't have another mole pistol. And that is what happened, and then I just had a really solid lethal with 8-cost Kid. I'd also even played 8-cost Kid delayed one turn because I saw I had the opportunity to just play another 7-cost Law. So I had 2 7-cost Law, Cavendish, Leader, 8-cost Kid. I was able to go for a very solid lethal. He said that he did have a third Mole Pistol, but he had just chosen to bottom it over a Luffy. And I'm not exactly sure how the game would have gone if he actually had been able to Mole Pistol the Kid. He probably just would have been able to win. And then the next round I played against Bonnie. This game was very close. At one point I made a decision to swing at his rested Bonnie blocker for 6s because I thought that I could maybe get it because I was going to swing quite a few 6s at it, and then I would be able to play a more safe and effective 8-cost Kid. But he was able to counter out of all the 6s, and then on my next turn I went for lethal, and he needed his life to be 1k 2k, and it was, so he was able to counter out of 2 7s to his 0 life with all the cards in his hand. So the next game I played against Purple Luffy, and even though I had no searchers, I was able to win because I was just able to put so much pressure on the board with a Cavendish and the 7-cost Law into Restand Law that on the next turn I was able to bait one of his blockers and then Dead Man's Game his other blocker and his Dawn and just go for a lethal that was very easy. He had no counter in hand basically, and even still I would have had another turn in the game. And then in the last round I played against another UP. This game was a little bit slower because I missed out on some pieces, and he had 8-cost Rush Luffy, but after he used the 8-cost Rush Luffy, he only had 3 cards in hand because I was still able to put a significant amount of pressure, and then using 7-cost Law, I was just able to swing 10 at the Luffy. He lost it, and I was able to swing over his Rosie too. He had no board. I had quite a significant board, and there was just no way he could come back. Alright, thank you so much for watching. And we're going to be running a little bit of a sale on all of the Riley TCG Law products, so keep a lookout for that. Thank you.
Perfect.